a world of Five Nights at Freddy's, a new YouTuber will emerge where speculation runs rampant. Not all the questions are answered, and the pieces don't fit cleanly together. One will rise to do the impossible and bend the laws of nature to his will and make the pieces fit together cleanly.
By unpopular demand, me!
Hey guys, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And I never thought this day would come. I never thought I'd be saying this. But Matpat is stepping down as host from Theorist HQ on March 9th this year. Now, I don't think he's leaving Theorist HQ. I think he's just stepping down to work on some other projects. So I'm not the best at explaining things. Go check out his video in order to better understand that. Links in the doobly-doo. But yeah, this is a sad day for the internet, watching the Theorist torch get passed on from one host to the next. I was originally planning to make this video when I completed 2020 mode in FNAF 1, but since Matthew is not going to be the host anymore, I figured that I make this as a final goodbye / fan letter to Matpat. Matpat, I hope this makes you proud, man. Farewell. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to theorizing. So I've been a FNAF fan for almost 5 years now. Well, it will be 5 years as soon as the time of the Chris Drebber DLC release comes. Because that's what initially made me fall in love with Five Nights at Freddy's. And that whole time, I haven't just been sitting here doing nothing. No, I've been planning my YouTube career. But aside from that, I've also been theorizing. I've been plotting things out and figuring out things out in a way that makes sense to me, that I believe. And just so recently, I completed my ultimate timeline theory with the help of the game theorists' ultimate timeline theory. And I'm going to share that with you guys today. So what makes my theory so different from Matpat's? Well, it attempts to answer all the questions that the game theory's ultimate timeline left unanswered. Now don't get me wrong, they did an amazing job. And they came up with a bunch of good points and came up with the most brilliant things that one could ever come up with. Like, not even I would have thought of that stuff. Not even most people would have thought about that stuff. You know what that makes him? That makes him the Albert Einstein of this generation. At least when it comes to FNAF. And yet, it still leaves a bunch of questions unanswered, like, when does Michael go to the restaurants? Sure, he goes to this location after FNAF 1, right? Right, I mean, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes sometime then, due to the animatronics being dismantled, right? Right. Then, wait a minute, he's supposed to get fired because of odor and tampering with the animatronics, which is happening after the games. Because he's a corpse after the fact, not before the fact. So where did the odor come from to get fired from the locations originally? What, is the undeniably canon Five Nights at Freddy's timeline theory suddenly correct? Well, maybe, we have no idea. But it does raise a lot of questions, such as, if Michael was in fact working at the restaurants during the games, then when did he get scooped? And same thing with Elizabeth. When did she get scooped? I mean, her death seems to be related to Fredbear's Family Diner era. But the murder weapon just doesn't make much sense. It only makes sense if Afton started kidnapping kids after he discovered Remnant. So the fact that he's doing it beforehand just doesn't make much sense. Which then begs the next question, when does he discover Remnant? And on and on and on. And it just leaves everything in shambles and pieces, and the pieces just don't fit cleanly together. And you don't just have to take my word for it. Matpat says the exact same thing on the part 4 of his Ultimate Timeline theory.
Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No.
I've had an amazing video on this. I'm also leaving that linked in the description below. You should check that out as well. Basically, the pieces don't fit cleanly, but my theory attempts to make the pieces fit cleanly all together. So enough introduction, let's go! Also, sorry for the clothes changing. I'm recording these takes on multiple days. Speaking of which, my recording time has ended for today, so it's time to move on to the next day. So with that, epic time travel transition! Whoa! I can't believe that worked. By the way, we are going to be going over some of the basics. First, some background information. I have played FNAF 1, both on and off camera. Off camera, I've gotten all 3 stars. On camera, not so much, I'm working on it. I've played FNAF 2 up to, but have not beaten Night 4 off camera. I have avoided spoilers for 3, at least as much as I could, aside from the first 15 videos on this playlist over here. I've avoided as many spoilers for FNAF 4 as possible, except for videos on this place here, and I have watched people play Persist Location, again on this playlist here. I have heard the tales of FNAF 6 from a few game 3 videos I watched back in the day during my early days on YouTube during the 2016 era. And I've heard plenty about Midnight Motorist from the 3 following videos here. I also remember a few game theories from FNAF 7. I intimately know FNAF 8 and all its DLCs, because that's the thing that made me fall in love with FNAF in the first place, as I stated previously. Then there's FNAF 9 and 10, which I sadly have super spoilers, and FNAF 12, which I avoided spoilers for entirely. I know some of the books from videos from people like Dry Toast, and I personally read cover to cover the Silver Eyes and Twisted Ones, and currently in the process of reading the first story of Into the Pit. I've also seen people play FNAF World, but outside of all that, yeah, my knowledge of FNAF is pretty much limited to just that. Which probably isn't enough to create both sides of the theory, but hey, that's just a theory, a game theory, and I'm trying it the hell anyways. So without further ado, let's go! So our story begins much like the game theorists. Before Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizza Mall was left in ruins, Freddy Fazbear got a start at Fredbear's singing show. I'm gonna do this first. Look at the art. It's black and white with pie eyes. The same art style that was used for Mickey Mouse, which was from the 1930s. So clearly this is taking place in the 1930s. Now, you might be asking yourselves what this was. Well, Fredbear's singing show was a traveling circus. Now, I know FNAF said it was a traveling carnival, but for a ticket? For a fare? Seems like a bit much to me personally. I think it was a traveling carnival, but more or less a tiny traveling circus with the bear as the star attraction. You know, like it had clowns and whatnot and popcorn, but it didn't have no fancy rides or anything. But that's just my opinion. I have the right to my opinion, and FNAF, aka John, has the right to his. So please respect both of our opinions. Thank you. So it's here when we fast forward. How far? Several decades at least, but to what year? Well, for that knowledge, we gotta figure out the date of FNAF 1. Because you see, there is one detail that almost everyone has seemed to miss, and it's got carefully added into the games. Roll the tape!
The animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night, but do I blame them? No. If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years, and I never got a bath, if I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years, 20 years, 20 years.
20 years. These animatronics have been around for fucking 20 years. Now that, my friends, is a long time. And that means that if we want to figure out exactly when we're fast forwarding to, we gotta first figure out the age of these animatronics. So first we're gonna have to calculate the date of FNAF 1. Luckily, we can do that using the paycheck. At the end of the game, you're presented with a paycheck. Now the year is obstructed, but we can use other parts of the paycheck in order to figure out the date. Let's start with part number 1, the actual price tag of the check itself. It reads $120. Divide that by the number of hours worked and we get $4 an hour, which is below minimum wage. But the closest thing I could find to this minimum wage would be within the 1991 and 1995 time range, where the minimum wage was $4.25, which was $4.29 an hour. Really fast burning time, you could have spared people an extra 25 cents. Anyways, that's a time range, not an exact date. Then we can use the second part of the paycheck, the date on it. Sure, it doesn't tell us the exact year, but does give us two other numbers that we can surely use to identify it. The day and the month. Now, in order to figure that out, we first gotta figure out what day this is. Luckily, we can get some hints. Sorry guys, but the next thing I was about to say was faulty. I thought that the newspaper from FNAF 1 said, and I quote, "Looking for a night guard to work the night shift, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 5-day work week with possibility of overtime." But apparently, looking back, that's not on there. Now, my initial premise was that since we're working a 5-day work week, when we apply Occam's razor to that, then most likely mean we're working a Monday through Friday shift, which would make the two dates Friday the 12th and Saturday the 13th. But theoretically, my logic could still play out. I mean, look at how Five Nights at Freddy's works. You play 5 days straight, with then the 6th and 7th night being extras. Almost as if you're working a 5-day work week with overtime days. But you don't have to just take my word for it. It says so specifically on the Night 6 paycheck. See? You've earned some overtime. Night 6 is clearly meant to be overtime hours. You're working a weekly shift. Now, the place needs to be guarded 7 days a week. And this is where we can apply Occam's razor, because usually a 5-day work week is a Monday through Friday shift. And since we don't know the year, we can easily assume that to be the case. So, applying Occam's razor, that gives us, what I said earlier, Friday the 12th and Saturday the 13th. Now, if we look up calendars from the 1990s, we find out that this date exists in the year of, drumroll please, 1993. But if I'm wrong, then no worries, because we got a plan B. If you look up calendars for 1987, you'll find that the game of FNAF 2 takes place on the Thursday the 12th and Friday the 13th. Which means that in theory, it could be the year 1992. So it's either 1993 or 1992. Please let me know what you guys believe it is to be in the comments below. Anyways, take away 20 from 1993 and you get yourself 1973. And do the same thing from 1992 and get yourself 1972. So it's around this time that the FNAF 1 animatronics were made. So fast forward to the year 1973. Here we see a mysterious purple man commit many atrocious acts. Murdering a kid, murdering 5 kids, murdering 5 more kids, helping an employee into the suit. Very atrocious stuff. But it does leave one to wonder, who is the purple guy? Well, he's none other than William Afton. Yes, when I said we were going over the basics, I meant we were going over the basics. So just, if you're a long-time FNAF fan, just bear with me and hold your breath. So how do we know it's William Afton? Well, we can turn to the books. But the books are a separate universe. Sense and continuity, I hear you typing. You would be right, if it weren't for one tiny little thing. You see, we hear the name Afton said in Sister Location,
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
And then we see it and consider the fact that these guys are designed to literally kidnap kids. We can only assume that they were built by the purple guy. Now, so that makes the purple guy someone Afton. In the books, purple guy is credited as William Afton. No joke. In the Silver Ice novel, William Afton is the killer. Need more proof? What about the fact that in the character encyclopedia it credits Scraptrap to not as Scraptrap, but as William Afton. So what's important about this guy being William Afton? Well, a lot. Because there's one character that is apparently a friend of William's. You know him, you love him, HRY. Now, HRY says that he's a friend of William's in his connection terminated speech.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend.
Now, in the books, William does have a friend, Henry Emily. And let's look at the name again. HRY. Henry. Yep, this guy is Henry. Well, time for epic transition number 2. I'm sorry, this is probably getting annoying at this point, but I've recorded 3 takes of this across multiple separate days. Actually, no, I've taken about 5 or 6 takes across multiple separate days. And I'm trying to take the best takes and plugging them into my alternate timeline theory. So yeah. Also, forgive me for the lighting changing. I'm also taking additional sub-takes at different points in time as well. So, if you're wondering why the lighting changing, that's why. I'm sorry if that's getting annoying, but this has to be perfect. It's for Matpat after all. I hope you like it, Matpat. I hope you choose to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Wouldn't mind it. Then, where was I? Ah, yes. Epic transition number 2. Ooh, that never gets old. Now, what is so important about HRY being Henry? Well, it's very important because it shows that Henry built the FNAF 1 animatronics. At least he did in the books, and it's reasonable to assume that he did so in the games as well. Leads me to my next part, for Henry built his first animatronics, Trash in the Gang. You thought I was going to say mediocre melodies, didn't you? Well, how do we know that the Trash in the Gang are the first animatronics? Well, we gotta turn to a Henry parallel, Edwin. In the Tales from Pizzaplex books, we got Henry parallel, Edwin. Now, how do we know that Edwin is the Henry parallel? Well, he makes the FNAF 1 animatronics just like Henry does in the Silver Ice novels. So clearly these two are meant to be related. Not literally, figuratively. And this Henry parallel gets his start making robotic vacuum cleaners. Sound familiar? Combine this with their simplistic design, they're even being made from trash, which seems to suggest that these animatronics came first. With the money earned from selling Trash in the Gang, Henry was able to buy scrap to build the next breed of animatronics, the mediocre melodies. How do we know that they're next in line? Well, for starters, they're powered by car batteries. Versus every other animatronic, which is free roaming. These guys are still. Now, them being made out of scrap is just a personal belief of mine. It just makes sense in my head. Feel free to disagree. Anyway, so what does he do with these animatronics? Why, he has a restaurant with them. How do we know? Well, because there are 4 kids in Happiest Day that have the 4 character masks on them, clearly signifying that these characters had merch. Clearly they were used for parties or something. But the lifespan of this was very short-lived as his business quickly failed, while he didn't get bailed out by none other than Afton Robotics. Cause, which makes more sense? William having his own restaurant that we never even heard or even seen of, or has even been implied in the games? Or Afton Robotics, an already existing robotics company, buys out Henry's robotics restaurant in order to make all the stuff that happens. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Hi, friend. Hi. You don't want to stay? Okay. Bye-bye. Now, Afton Robotics is known for its innovations in robotics technology, being the company to invent the bipedal walking robot. And now Henry was welcomed into Afton's underground bunker beneath his house. He had access to all the toys. He had access to the professional-looking soldering/welding stations. He had access to the cutting machines. He had access to all the toys. This was his playground dream home. And with that, he built a prototype endoskeleton. He took the Afton Robotics innovations, some new ideas, and some scrap he could find, threw it into a melting pot, and created the first prototype endoskeleton. He created... Now with that all out of the way, Henry and William started working on Fredbear. In addition, Henry also built the puppet. Now why would Henry build the puppet? For security. But why? Well, remember, there was probably a reason that Henry's business didn't do too well. There's a reason he had to get bailed out. Say, probably because of a lawsuit? Something must have happened at his old restaurant, thus causing the place to get shut down or cause him to file for bankruptcy. That's why he has to have the security measure. It's to make sure that this incident cannot happen again at this new location, at this second chance. So much has happened in the year 1973 for him. He had opened up a restaurant which had closed, and now he's given a second chance, and he's not going to give it up. In addition to that, William makes his own first character, Spring Bonnie, and with that, the group creates Fredbear's Family Diner. Now, that's great and all, but one question I've heard tossed around the community is this William's intellectual property? As in, did he own Fredbear's singing show in order to legally be able to create Fredbear's Family Diner? Or did he buy it or something like that? Well, the answer is he owned it. But not in the way you think. But first, my time for today of recording has ended. So with that, epic transition number 3! Alright, let's take a look at the custom night. There, every animatronic has something to do with William in one way or another. For the FNAF 1, Withers, Phantoms, and FNAF 4 animatronics, they were all the same animatronics taken different shape, which means they're all possessed by the same 5 original kids that he killed. The toy animatronics were there when he committed the dead kids incident, which I am on the fence about. And the toy animatronics are part of the OG Xeno, which can mean either one of two things. Either A, they're parts of the kids' souls in them, or B, they have not their part of souls, but their remnants in them. Either way, something's inside those animatronics that doesn't belong. The sister location animatronics he literally built. Ennard is just the Funtime animatronics merged together into one. Puppet and Lefty are the exact same animatronic, and FNAF 6 animatronics were all there when he perished. Hell, there are even 2 versions of himself there. Clearly it's trying to imply that every character here has something to do with them in one way or another. So then, that leaves 2 oddballs. Phone Guy, and oh man, consequences. Let's start off with the first one, Phone Guy. What does Phone Guy have to do with William? Well, let's analyze Phone Guy first to get some evidence. Well, first we know that he's voiced by Scott. Alright, that's the starting point. Now, according to the Furious United livestream, there is an image of Scott in the FNAF 4 house.
So you have the connection of the pictures into the FNAF 4 house being of Scott himself.
And so the fact that Scott is voicing Phone Guy, you need to assume that an image of Scott is an image of Phone Guy as well. Thus, Phone Guy has earned himself a picture in the Afton household, but we can do one better. Now, according to Scott, there are no Easter eggs in this game, so does this mean that this kid actively heard the FNAF One Night One phone call? Well, buck into your seats as I BS my way through this. Say you were trying to draw a connection between the main protagonist of FNAF 4 and Phone Guy. How would you do it? You couldn't create a new asset, because that would just confuse the audience into thinking it was some kind of weird cryptic message. No, you gotta reuse an asset. More specifically, you gotta reuse an iconic asset. And what's more iconic than the FNAF One Night One phone call? I mean, it literally is known by everyone. I even have it memorized. And when everyone imitates Phone Guy, they don't say, hello, or hello, hello. They go, hello, 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 which is exclusive to the FNAF One Night One phone call. Don't quote me on that. I could be mistaken. My memory is probably messing with me. I probably said it again somewhere else, but right now, I'm fairly certain that he said it's only in the FNAF One Night One phone call. So yeah, it's created the most iconic one. It would be illogical of him to use any other one. In short, this wasn't just to show, oh, this kid heard the FNAF One Night One phone call. No, it was to convey a message, while reusing an asset that would allow people to immediately recognize it. It was a clever design decision on Scott's part. So then, what's the message? Well, simply to show that this kid has heard Phone Guy's phone calls. He has heard him make a recording at some point, which would only be explained if he was close to the active family, say a family friend. I mean, how else would you explain that he earned his place amongst the walls of the FNAF 4 household? So yeah, that's all it was. It was a clever design decision on one clever Scott coffin. Whew. I said I would be going over the basics, but I didn't mean I wasn't going to go hardcore in this one. And I just went hardcore. Also, feel free to correct me in the comments below. I feel like my logic could easily be fought off. And, well, I'm open to criticism. I wouldn't be much of a scientist now if I wasn't. So that explains Phone Guy. But then, what about Old Man Consequences? Let's break down this thing for a moment. Old Man Consequences. He's an old man. More importantly, he's someone's old man. I suspect that Old Man Consequences was William's grandfather. A literal old man that's related to William. That explains how he appears here. He's literally William's heritage. Maybe it was him seeing Old Man Consequences, the ghost of his father, that got him started and made him want to investigate the paranormal. I mean, it's an explanation. More importantly, it explains why he's here. But why would he be William's grandfather? Unless he was the owner of Fredbear's singing show. Unless he was the OG owner, and this was passed down to William. It's a family heirloom. The rights to Fredbear belong to him thanks to his grandfather, which is how he's able to own the rights to Fredbear's in the first place. So yeah, we answered that major question. What's next? Well, let's fast forward a few years. How far? I don't know, don't care. Somewhere between 1973 and 1983. The date isn't important. What is important is what happens in between these 2 years, as we see William take a kid's life behind Fredbear's family diner. How do you know this is Fredbear's? Well, it's an extremely small space, and the only animatronic that we see Freddy is holding Mr. Cupcake. Since Mr. Cupcake is Chica's companion, while Freddy's item is a microphone, then the fact that he's holding a cupcake instead of a microphone must mean that this was before Chica was welcomed into the band. Also, sub-theory, one of the books says that the mediocre melodies consisted of not a bear, but of a yellow chick. Could this mean that Chica was one of the mediocre melodies at one point? It's theoretically possible. Now, this series is all about dead kids and possessing animatronics, so if this guy earned himself his own murder scene, then what makes him so special? Who does he possess? The answer? the puppet. How we know? Well, look at his tear tracks. First they start off small, then they grow. They grow grotesquely large. They grow a very creepy, scary, and disturbing amount of large. There's huge emphasis on these tears. So, what does this mean? Well, let's look at the puppet. He has 2 tear tracks down his face. Now look at this. It's an image of the shadow puppet. And what you see? 2 giant tear tracks streaming straight to the floor. Look familiar? In short, this is a strong connection between the puppet and this kid. What else can we use? Well, at the end of this minigame, we get jump scared by the puppet. Now, every minigame has a jump scare relevant to it. For Save Them, it's Purple Guy. It makes sense since he's there. For Help Them, it's Golden Freddy. Makes sense since he's the last mask who possesses the last kid. For Foxy Go Go, it's, well, Foxy. Pretty self-explanatory. So the fact that the puppet is in this jump scare signifies that this kid has some significant tie to the puppet. Now what would that be? Of course he possesses the puppet. But we can see this playing out plain as day in FNAF 6. In FNAF 6, there's a puppet minigame. We see the puppet with green eyes and no tear tracks, contrast to the puppet who has white eyes and tear tracks, who follows a girl outside who disappears, only to then see the girl lying there dead, with car tracks leading away, almost as if someone drove up, killed the girl, and drove off. And we see the puppet flop next to her dead body, clearly signifying the 2 of them becoming one. Who is she? Well, she's Charlie Emily. How do we know this? Well, Henry in the books has a daughter, Charlie. And in the games, we hear that he has a daughter, at least according to his Connection Terminated speech.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well.
In the background, we see images of the puppet, clearly signifying that the puppet is his daughter. So it's something Emily, but we can get this later in today. In this screenshot here, in which game I don't exactly remember, we can see that there's 5 graves representing 5 dead kids, with the 6th one being far off in the back. This one reads Charlotte, the full name for Charlie Emily. So boom, this girl is Charlie. But why did William kill her? That's one question that's been on every FNAF theorist's mind for quite a while now. What is his motivation to kill at this point? I mean, the crying child hasn't died yet, so what is his motivation? Is it the crying child, Elizabeth? Well, as I stated in this video, it was the death of his wife. In FNAF 5, we see these cutscenes called The Immortal and the Restless. So first, let's analyze this cartoon to see if we can get any hints from it. We see that Vlad, the vampire, is wearing a purple suit. Since purple is called William, we can easily assume that this must be William himself talking. So why did Clara leave William? Well, as Matpat put it, and as the TV show shows, he's a negligent father and a non-existent husband. I mean, the baby is clearly his. It's a vampire wearing purple, and yet again, William still ignores him, under the claims that
the baby isn't mine.
Who is this child, you might be wondering? Well, he's representative of Michael. How we know this? Well, think about it. They're both vampires wearing purple. Now, what are vampires known for? Being undead. And at the end of everything, both William and Michael end up being undead purple men. Clearly, these shows are supposed to be one and the same, just like how it's depicted within the TV show. But anyways, I digress. So, she obviously leaves him, considering the fact that at the end of the show, she literally burns down the house.
Good, I like it warm.
Good, because I also set the house on fire.
His focus is probably purely on Fredbear's Family Diner. But what else can we use here to show that she died? Well, first we can turn to Laura's eyes. Look here at this version that we see of the Finance at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 trailer of Laura. Here we see that she has blue eyes. This is important because characters' eye colors can change if they're possessed by a kid. For the puppet, its eyes went from being green to white. For babies, her eyes went from being blue to green. And we know for a fact that because this is either a video game or IRL, this is a raw, unpossessed version of Ballora. Meaning that this has to be how our eyes originally looked. So the fact that their eyes are purple in this location must imply that Ballora is in fact possessed. Sorry guys about the clothes changing happening without there being enough transition, but I'm recording this last minute because I've already done most of the edits and I want to get this out before the end of the night, so, you know, gotta get this done. Anyways, of course Ballora's possessed. All the fun times are possessed. What proof do I have that she's possessed by Mrs. Afton herself? Well, for that knowledge, we have to listen to her voice lines.
Admit it. You wanted to let me in. Why do you hide inside these walls? These are strange circumstances that have brought us together.
She speaks not as if she were an homage to Mrs. Afton, but as if she were Mrs. Afton herself. I mean, you wanted to let me in? That's clearly her saying that William wanted to let her in when he was so focused on his work that didn't have time for her family. While we're on topic of voice lines, let's listen to Ballora's song. All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb. She is in a room, an empty room, and it's a tomb. This is clearly implying that this is her tomb, that what she's seeing is her own tomb. Now look at Ballora Gallery. It's an empty room with a soul trapped inside, or as one would call it, a tomb. I suspect that this room is her tomb that she's talking about. That the room in question is Ballora Gallery. We can do even better. Now in this location bunker, we can see 3 heads. One with brown eyes, one with green eyes, and one with eyes closed. Brown eyes, obviously the crying child. Green eyes, clearly Elizabeth. And closed eyes, well, let's not forget, after minutes of Ballora's eyes were closed, symbolizing the fact that she had her eyes closed to the possibilities, that she didn't see what he saw. So, eyes closed is clearly representative of Ballora and Mrs. Afton. But why on earth would he be building a robot version of Mrs. Afton? I mean, the crying child and Elizabeth, that makes sense. They're both dead. So why would he be building a robot version of Ballora unless she was dead too? That's the only explanation I have. Why would he be building a robot version of Clara unless of course she was dead and he was trying to bring her back to life? Plus it makes perfect sense. Mrs. Afton, the love of William's life, suddenly leaves him, and to add insult to injury, she dies. Emotionally speaking, that's a 1-2 blow to the crotch. It would be devastating for William, and that's most likely the reason why he started killing in the first place. It doesn't take, for some, it only takes just one little thing to push him over the edge, and William got 2 things. So storytelling wise, it makes sense. So yeah, Mrs. Afton leaves him and tragically dies. This causes Afton to get into a drunken fit of rage, upon which then he kills Charlie, thus getting Pepper's Family Diner shut down. So, how does 583 fit into all this? Well, 587. What about the games? And most importantly of all, who's Jeremy? All that and more next time! I know, but this video is already like, what, 40 minutes at this point? Yeah, I'm gonna need to stop it here. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Matpat, this is for you. I hope this made you proud, buddy. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And until next time, thank you all so much for watching. This is really fun to make, and I enjoy getting my thoughts out there into the world. I'm sorry for the stuttering that I did. I was speaking off the top of my head. I never use a script in these videos. It'd be pretty awkward for me to just be constantly looking down at a page. So, yeah. I just spoke off the top of my head, which is also how I got some things wrong. Also, forgive me about the intro being slightly different. I had to re-record that part because the file literally corrupted on me in my process of trying to get extracted out from my broken camera. Yes, I'm still trying to get a new camera. And yeah, that just all fell apart. So I had to re-record that. So sorry if that looks different at all. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. This was heavily inspired by the game theorists and other FNAF theorists like FNAF. Thank you so much for the inspiration, you guys. Big shout out to them. Thank you for inspiring me to become a YouTuber. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And until next time.